Every year, they threw him a party and forgot mine, until the year I stopped waiting to be remembered. My heels clicked against the polished marble floor of my apartment building's lobby, each sound echoing through the emptiness of a Tuesday evening. Another 14-hour workday down, another milestone for Horizon Brands. The client had practically hugged me after my presentation. It should have felt good, another victory, but as I stepped into the elevator, watching my reflection in the mirrored walls, all I saw was exhaustion dressed up as success. Quinn Edwards, 32 years old today. Senior PR executive. Wearing burnout like expensive perfume, my green eyes looked back at me, asking the same question I'd been avoiding. What's the point if you're celebrating alone? The elevator doors opened. I checked my phone for what felt like the 100th time, still nothing. No missed calls. No texts. No family group messages pretending they cared. Doesn't matter, I whispered under my breath as I walked into my apartment. Birthdays are for kids anyway. Except, it did matter. The little cake I'd bought myself that morning sat on the coffee table like a quiet accusation, one lonely candle standing upright, waiting for a flame that wouldn't come. Happy birthday to me, I muttered, kicking off my heels. The silence that followed felt heavier than the city skyline outside my window. I dropped my leather briefcase, loosened my ponytail, and sank into the sofa. The apartment, though beautifully decorated, felt hollow tonight. It had the right furniture, the right lighting, but no warmth, no laughter, no one to blow out a candle with. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward midnight, counting down the last minutes of my birthday. My phone remained stubbornly silent. I grabbed my laptop, telling myself I'd review tomorrow's proposal to distract my mind. But my fingers had other plans, Facebook. And the moment the page loaded, my heart froze. There he was, Miles, my brother, glass of champagne raised high, surrounded by smiling faces. A banner behind him read, "Congratulations on your promotion." My father's arm was draped proudly around him. My mother beamed up at her golden boy. The timestamp said 4 hours ago. On my birthday, every scroll hurt. Photo after photo, family, relatives, cousins I hadn't seen in years, all gathered together to celebrate him. And the captions. "So proud of our superstar," my dad wrote. "The Edwards legacy continues," my mom added with her signature sparkle emoji. I set my laptop down before my shaking hands could drop it. They hadn't forgotten. They'd just chosen to celebrate something else, someone else again. And like a cruel déjà vu, the memories flooded back. 11 years old, sitting alone at a restaurant table, one candle melting into the cake as I waited for them to come back from Miles's debate competition. They promised they'd make it in time. They didn't. 17. Sent off to grandma's house because my parents were busy touring Yale with Miles. My dad's words echoing. "It's his future, Quinn. You'll understand." At my own college graduation, my family hijacked the dinner to announce Miles's engagement. The evening that should have been mine became all about him. Venues, dresses, wedding dates. Even last month, after I pulled off a campaign that boosted a client's revenue by 41%, Dad waved it off. "It's just advertising, Quinn. Not like Miles's work in finance, that's real impact." I looked at my phone, scrolling through contacts I hadn't spoken to in weeks. Family names blurred together. People who only remembered me when they needed something. Then a notification appeared, an email from HR. Subject: Performance bonus for Horizon campaign. Amount: $82,000. For a moment I just stared. $82,000. My work. My results. My worth. Then my phone rang. Mom. Hope fluttered, small but stubborn. "Maybe this time." "Hello?" "Then there's Stefan like self. Now they were great with water in Paris." "Quinn, darling," she chirped, her tone bright and airy. "I'm so glad I caught you. Listen, we're planning something special for Miles and Jessica's anniversary next month. And I was hoping you could help out. Maybe with catering and decorations, you're so good at that sort of thing." I looked at the clock. Midnight. My birthday was officially over. "Mom," I said softly, my voice trembling. "Today was my birthday." A pause. Oh, honey," she said finally, like she'd just realized. With Miles's promotion and everything, it must have slipped our minds. Slipped. Just like every year before it. I stared at my laptop screen at that bold $82,000 figure, and something inside me shifted. "Don't worry about it, Mom," I said, my tone suddenly steady. "I finally understand what's important to this family. And for the first time in my life, I really did." 4 days later, I was at work, staring at something worse than a forgotten birthday, a group chat. The family group chat. Mom had accidentally added me to it. Messages sprawled across the screen like crime scene evidence. "Dad. Quinn should contribute significantly to Miles's anniversary gift, at least $20,000. Mom. She just got that bonus. Time she supports the family for once." There it was. The word family again. Used like a weapon. And even my name misspelled. Quinn. 1. I leaned back in my office chair, staring out at the Chicago skyline. Inside Horizon's glass-walled conference room, I was supposed to be preparing for tomorrow's presentation. Instead, I was realizing how small I really was in their world. Jennifer, my colleague and best friend, poked her head in. "Your brother's online too," she said, then frowned when she saw my face. "Everything okay?" I turned my laptop toward her. Miles used our contacts at Regent Tech. Pulled their marketing director into his investment pitch without even asking me. Her jaw dropped. "That's the third time, Quinn, and your dad thinks you should give him 20 grand for his anniversary? That's messed up. Like take they one of might back." The reins are very backed in saying. "Apparently, it's time I support the family for once," I said bitterly. Jennifer perched on my desk, crossing her arms. "What exactly have they ever done for you?" Before I could answer, my boss Lawrence Chen appeared in the doorway, all calm authority in a tailored charcoal suit. "Quinn," he said, sliding a folder onto my desk. "The Westfield campaign results are in. 41% revenue increase. The board's thrilled." He smiled, genuine and proud. "This is why I fought for your bonus. You earned every penny." After he left, Jennifer gave my shoulder a squeeze. "See? Someone notices." She was right. At least someone did. Then my phone rang again. "Miles, probably another favor." "And to be wanted of this 5. I answered, my voice neutral. "Hey sis, need a quick favor. Regent Tech CMO, can you invite her to dinner tomorrow? Big potential client, family helping family, right?" "I'll see what I can do," I said flatly, already knowing I wouldn't. That evening, I stopped by Mrs. Bennett's apartment on the 3rd floor. She opened the door with her usual warm smile. The smell of freshly baked oatmeal cookies filled the air. "Right on time," she said. "These won't eat themselves." At 84, Mrs. Bennett moved with the quiet determination of someone half her age. For 3 years now, Tuesday dinners had been our tradition, me bringing takeout, her offering dessert and stories. She was the family I'd chosen. "You look troubled," she said, pushing the plate toward me. So I told her everything, the family chat, the money, the misspelled name. By the end, I sounded like a child again, voice cracking under the weight of old wounds. Mrs. Bennett reached over, her wrinkled hand covering mine. "Some parents never see their children clearly," she said softly. "They're too busy looking at their own reflection." Her words lingered long after I went home. Saturday came faster than I expected. Family dinner night. The Edwards mansion loomed over Lakeshore Drive, 3 stories of stone and perfection. Inside, my mother fussed with flowers while my father poured scotch like he was rehearsing for a power portrait. Miles and Jessica sat on the sofa, flawless as always. Dinner played out like a script. Dad bragging about Miles's promotion. Mom adding supportive ad-libs. I barely spoke, until dessert. "Quinn," Dad began, setting down his coffee cup with that commanding tone that never invited discussion. "We need to talk about your contribution to Miles and Jessica's anniversary. 20,000 should cover the venue and catering. As the one who just got a bonus, it's only fair. Their fine boast to the Clainers of very 7. Mom nodded, pearls catching the chandelier light. "Family supports family, darling." That phrase, again, family supports family, I repeated quietly. "When has this family ever supported me?" Dad frowned. "I beg your pardon? I can't contribute 20,000. I said firmly. "That's a quarter of my bonus. I have other plans." Silence. Thick. Unfamiliar. "No one tells your father no," my mother said finally, her voice trembling. "After all we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me?" Dad stood, towering over me. "I will not tolerate ingratitude in this house. Your brother is the real achiever. The least you can do is support his success. We could misstep in." His words hit like bullets, sharp, precise. Years of conditioning behind them. I rose slowly, gathering my purse. "I need to go. Quinn, please don't make a scene," Mom begged. But for once, I didn't cave. I didn't apologize. I didn't smile to make everyone comfortable. I walked out the door, and though guilt followed me like a shadow, something else followed too. Resolution. For the first time in 32 years, I hadn't faded into the background. I had said no. It felt terrifying, and it felt right. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. 7 missed calls. Then 8. Then 9. I stared at the screen from where it lay on my kitchen counter, vibrating like it had something urgent to say. But I already knew what it was. Mom. Dad. Maybe even Miles. I let it ring. Instead, I made coffee. The slow kind. French press. Watching the grounds bloom and rise before I poured the hot water. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that used to hurt, but today, it felt like peace. At exactly 7:15, Mom's voice filled the apartment through my voicemail. Quinn, sweetie. This rebellious phase needs to end. Your father hasn't slept since that dinner. You're breaking our hearts. Rebellious phase. I almost laughed. I wasn't 16 sneaking out past curfew. I was 32, finally saying no. When she called again, I answered. Mom, I'm not rebellious, I said, keeping my tone even. I'm setting boundaries. There was a pause. Then a sharp inhale. Boundaries? Quinn, how can you say that after everything we've sacrificed for you? My mascara wand froze mid-air. I looked at my own reflection in the mirror. What exactly have you sacrificed for me, Mom? Her gasp on the other end was dramatic, like I'd said something unthinkable. We gave you everything. I have a meeting, I said flatly. We'll talk later. And I hung up. By afternoon, the situation escalated. The glass doors at Horizon swung open, and there he was, my father. Richard Edwards. Towering. Immaculate suit. Disapproval radiating off him like a cologne. Employees turned to look. Conversations faltered. Even the receptionist straightened nervously as he marched through the lobby. Jennifer caught sight of him through the conference room window and mouthed. Code red. I met him halfway, forcing a polite smile. Dad? You can't just. One, he interrupted, voice low but cutting. You should conduct yourself like a professional. Then maybe we should move this out of the lobby, I said tightly, leading him toward a small meeting room. The air outside buzzed with curiosity, nothing like a family showdown to liven up a Monday. What do you want? I asked once the door shut behind us. Your mother hasn't stopped crying, he snapped. Is that what you wanted? To punish us because we missed one birthday? I felt it then, the heat rising, the years of swallowed words clawing their way out. One? I repeated. Try 20. 20 birthdays, graduations, promotions, 20 times you forgot I existed. He waved a hand, checking his watch like he had a board meeting to get to. You always exaggerate. The point is, Miles deserves our support. 20,000 from your bonus is more than fair. Before I could answer, my work phone buzzed an emergency alert from our biggest client. Dad, I have to handle this. We're done here. There has been day with you, Mo. This conversation isn't finished, he barked. It is for me. And I walked out, my heart pounding, my hands shaking, but my voice steady as I joined my team to deal with the client crisis. 3 hours later, I stood before the Horizon Executive Board, walking them through the crisis management strategy that saved the Westridge account. My voice didn't waver once. That, said our CEO afterward, clapping a hand on my shoulder, was extraordinary work. You just saved a $3 million client. Pride bloomed in my chest. Not the kind my parents handed out selectively, but something earned, real, grounded. Thank you, I said simply. Walking back to my office, I saw 6 missed calls from Miles and a text. Mom's crying every night because of you. Fix this. Like I was the problem. I silenced the phone. Then I opened my email to find a flood of congratulations from clients and coworkers, thanking me for saving the account. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. At work, I was valued. At home, I was a scapegoat. And that's when it hit me. I couldn't change them. But I could change everything else. 3 weeks after my birthday, I sat in a corner cafe downtown. The kind of place with mismatched mugs and quiet jazz playing in the background. My laptop sat open, half a slice of carrot cake beside it. At a nearby table, a group of friends laughed around a girl wearing a paper crown. Make a wish, Amanda, someone called. They clapped, cheered, sang. I smiled and then felt the sting in my chest. I would never have that with my family. No amount of achievement, no promotion or bonus, would make them see me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and before I could second guess it, I typed, Lakefront property, Michigan. Dozens of listings appeared. One caught my eye, a 4-bedroom house with wide windows facing the water, a wraparound deck, pines for privacy. Price, $365,000. I scrolled through the photos, my chest tightening, not with fear, but something else, hope. The next morning, I called the realtor. 2 days later, I stood on that wooden deck, sunlight dancing across the lake. The owners are motivated sellers, she said. They've already moved to Arizona. I'll take it, I heard myself say. She blinked. Don't you want to think about it? Maybe bring your family. No. The word came out clear, confident, solid. This one's for me. The mortgage approval came fast, excellent credit, stable job, solid down payment. When I signed the papers, Mrs. Bennett came with me. She'd insisted. You're doing the right thing, dear, she said, patting my hand as the agent handed me the keys. Sometimes we have to build our own sanctuary. For the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. Weekends became transformation days. I painted walls, assembled furniture, unpacked boxes, framed photos of moments. I was proud of college graduation, my first award, team celebrations, Magazine features. In the master bedroom, I hung a little wooden sign. The birthday suite. Inside, I put a reading chair by the window, stacked books I'd been too busy to read, and bought the softest bedding I could find. One Sunday afternoon, I sat at my kitchen island with a cup of tea, and drafted invitations for a small housewarming. Jennifer. My colleagues. Mrs. Bennett. My finger hovered over the family contacts. A lifetime of conditioning urged me to include them. Instead, I hit send, only to the people who had celebrated my wins and stood by me when no one else did. The action felt small but revolutionary. That night, I sat out on the deck, the lake reflecting the stars. My phone was inside. For once, I didn't care who was calling. For the first time in my adult life, I felt powerful. Not just successful. Powerful. The kind of power that comes when you finally choose yourself. Sunday morning, I posted a photo. Nothing dramatic, just me on the deck, barefoot, holding a glass of Pinot Noir, the lake stretching endlessly behind me. Caption. Weekend at my new lake house, birthday gift to myself. I set my phone down and watched the water shimmer under the late summer Sunday. For 20 minutes, I just breathed. When I finally checked my screen again, the notifications hit like a wave. 17 missed calls. 32 messages. Mom had called 8 times in 15 minutes. I silenced the ringer and slid the phone into my pocket. Not today. Instead, I grabbed the chair I'd built the day before, settled onto the deck, and watched the sunset paint the lake in gold. This house was mine, every inch of it. Every choice, every color, every corner. The sage green paint, the brass doorknobs, the light fixtures, each one said Quinn in a way no one had ever asked before. Jennifer's comment popped up under the photo. You deserve this and more. Can't wait to see it in person. And for once, I believed it. Monday morning brought 6 voicemails from Mom. Each more frantic than the last. Quinn. Call me back immediately. Where did you get money for a house? Your father says this is irresponsible. People are asking questions we can't answer. Your brother is driving to your work right now, you'd better be there. There's a family emergency meeting tomorrow night. Don't make this worse. Delete. 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 Then I made blueberry pancakes in my new kitchen, sunlight spilling through the window. By afternoon, I'd hung curtains in the master bedroom and finished assembling patio furniture when my work phone rang. Jennifer. Your brother showed up at the office looking for you. She said. He looked rattled. Asked if I knew where you were. My stomach tightened. What did you tell him? That your whereabouts weren't mine to share, she said firmly. Then he gave me that look, you know, the Edwards family glare. I laughed, an honest, easy laugh that surprised both of us. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. He cornered Devin from accounting. Devin might have mentioned something about Michigan. So, heads up, I stepped outside onto my deck, staring at the lake. Autumn leaves drifted lazily across the grass. Let them, I said simply. Saturday came bright and clear. The kind of day that almost felt like forgiveness. By noon, the house smelled like fresh paint and coffee. The lake shimmered under the early autumn sun, and for the first time since I moved in, I wasn't thinking about work or my family. Just the sound of laughter and the smell of barbecue waiting to happen. My housewarming day. The first guests to arrive were from the office, Jennifer, of course, leading the charge with her loud laugh and 2 bottles of Prosecco. Behind her came Devin, the one who'd accidentally leaked my Michigan hideaway to my brother, carrying a bouquet of sunflowers as a peace offering. Figured I owed you this, he said sheepishly. You're forgiven. I smiled, taking them. As long as you promise not to mention my address to anyone with the last name Edwards. He held up his hands. Cross my heart. By the time Greg, my boss, showed up with his wife, the deck was full. There was music playing, soft jazz, the kind that made you want to stay longer, and the smell of grilled steaks drifted in the air. Mrs. Bennett arrived last, elegant as ever in her lavender cardigan, carrying a neatly wrapped bundle. For your bedroom, she said, eyes twinkling. A quilt. Handmade. Every home needs something stitched with love. My throat tightened. Mrs. Bennett. You didn't have to. Nonsense, she interrupted. You've built something here. It deserves warmth. She hugged me, and I blinked back tears. We ate on the deck as the sun began to sink. Jennifer handled the music. Greg manned the grill. And for once, the laughter around me didn't feel forced. It wasn't the polite kind you perform at family dinners. It was easy, messy, real. I looked around and realized something profound. These people weren't bound to me by blood, but they showed up. We toasted with glasses of wine, Greg lifting his toward me. To Quinn, who reminds us all, it's okay to choose yourself. The deck filled with applause and clinking glasses. Somewhere inside, a part of me that had been silent for years whispered, this is what family feels like. When the last of the guests left, the lake was silver under the moonlight. The house smelled of smoke and vanilla candles. I kicked off my shoes, sat on the deck, and breathed. The quiet no longer scared me, it was mine. Then my phone buzzed on the table beside me. Dad. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Then again, Miles. Finally, I picked it up and stared at the screen. A text from Dad appeared. Where did you get the money for a house? Answer immediately. I poured myself another glass of wine and typed nothing. Instead, I deleted the thread, locked my phone, and let the sound of crickets take over the night. By Monday, the Edwards family gossip network was in full motion. It started with a call from my cousin, Elaine, voice low and sugary sweet. The kind of tone that meant trouble. Everyone's talking about your lake house, she said. Aunt Claudia is beside herself. Uncle Richard wanted to call another family meeting, but you weren't there. I was busy, I said, flipping through design catalogs. Hanging shelves. She hesitated. Quinn, people are saying things. What things? That you're hiding money. That you're having some sort of breakdown. That this is all because you're jealous of Miles's success. I laughed out loud, startling her. Sounds exactly like something my family would say. Quinn. Elaine, I said, cutting her off gently. If people are going to talk about me, let them at least be creative. I hung up and went back to picking curtain fabric. That night, I slept with the windows open. The sound of waves against the shore was the only conversation I needed. The call that finally mattered came on Thursday night. Mom. I answered on the fourth ring, sitting on my porch swing. Quinn Elizabeth Edwards. She began, her voice sharp enough to slice glass. This has gone far enough. The Petersons, the Carsons, even Reverend Wallace has asked about your situation. My situation? I asked, leaning back, letting the swing move gently. This, attention-seeking behavior, she continued. Buying a house without consulting the family. Posting photos, people are asking questions. What kind of questions? Questions like why you would buy yourself a birthday present. Why we weren't there to help you celebrate. It's creating a very uncomfortable situation for this family. I smiled. The breeze lifted my hair, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. How interesting, I said softly. It's almost like actions have consequences. Her tone turned cold. We need to fix this. I'm organizing a family dinner Sunday night. Your father and I will explain that this was all a misunderstanding, that we've always supported you. The old me would have agreed immediately. Anything to keep the peace, but that Quinn no longer lived here. I'm available Tuesday, I said. 7 o'clock. And I'll bring the photo albums. She went silent. What photo albums? The brushing. The ones I've been keeping since I was 11, I said. You'll see. Tuesday arrived like a trial date. The granite steps of my parents' mansion stretched before me like courtroom stairs. I held the photo albums tight against my chest. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn, shadows that reached for me. Like memories trying to pull me back into obedience. Not tonight. I rang the bell instead of using my key. Dad opened the door, silver hair perfectly combed, expression carved from marble. You're late, he said, already turning away. I stepped inside. The air smelled of polished wood and tension. Mom stood in the foyer, tissues in hand, eyes red-rimmed but makeup untouched. Always just enough to look fragile. Quinn, she said, voice trembling. We've been so worried. I didn't answer. I knew the script. She cried. I felt guilty. Dad lectured. And I eventually apologized for existing. Not tonight. Miles appeared next, drink in hand, pausing when he saw me. His confident posture faltered just a bit. Dinner's getting cold, Mom said quickly, leading the way to the dining room. The table gleamed under the chandelier. Fine china. Silver candles. An image of family harmony. I placed the photo albums on the sideboard and sat down. Your mother made your favorite, Dad said, serving himself first. Beef Wellington. It hadn't been my favorite since high school. It was Miles's favorite. I stayed silent. Dad cleared his throat. Let's discuss why we're here. Mom nodded. Sweetheart, we're concerned about your impulsive decisions. Buying property without consulting us, posting on social media, people are starting to talk. It reflects poorly on the family, Dad added. Reckless spending, poor planning. You could have invested the money properly, maybe contributed something meaningful for everyone. I folded my hands. It was my bonus. My choice. Miles leaned forward, tone careful. Quinn, no one's saying you can't have nice things. But maybe selling it would calm everyone down. Mom's been crying every night. Stop, I said quietly. They froze. I stood, walked to the sideboard, and picked up the first photo album. I brought something you should see. Dad frowned. We don't have time for scrapbooks. Make time, I said, and I placed it right in the center of the table. The room went still, as if even the air had paused to listen. My mother blinked, mascara catching the light. My father's hand tightened around his wineglass. Miles just stared at the album like it might explode. Go ahead, I said, my voice calm. Open it. Dad sighed, exasperated. This is unnecessary, Quinn. You've made your point. I don't think I have, I replied. Not yet. Mom's fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the cover. The first page flipped open with a whisper. Album 1. Pages of Miles in party hats. Miles blowing out candles. Miles, surrounded by towers of presents, from age 6 to 25, birthday after birthday. Every one of them carefully photographed, professionally lit. Smiling faces all around. Turn to page 16, I said quietly. Miles hesitated, then flipped it open. There he was, 18th birthday, a shiny red car with a giant bow, Dad handing him the keys, Mom crying happy tears. The memory hit like static in my chest. That was a good year, Dad said, his voice nostalgic. Miles had just got into Yale, I finished. Yeah, I remember. You took him to dinner that night. I stayed home. Silence. I slid the second album toward them. Now this one's mine. Mom hesitated before opening it, and then stopped. Page after page empty. A few scattered photos. Me alone, holding a store-bought cupcake. Me at a desk in college. Cake crumbs next to textbooks. Mrs. Bennett hugging me on my 30th birthday. Nothing else. There was nothing to put in it, I said softly. You were never there. Quinn, Mom whispered, her voice cracking. That's not fair. Really? I asked. On my 21st birthday, you were at Miles's engagement party. You remember that, don't you? Miles's eyes darted to his plate. I opened the third album myself. Family vacations, Disney World, the Grand Canyon, Europe, and me? Nowhere. I'm not in these, I said, flipping through the glossy pages. Because I wasn't there. You left me with Grandma, or told me there wasn't enough money for everyone to go. Dad slammed his fork down, the sound sharp and final. What's the point of this melodrama? You've always been difficult. The point, I said, sliding a sheet of paper from my folder, is evidence. That when another 2% and gators and, I unfolded the spreadsheet and spread it out like a lawyer in court. Family spending, I explained. Miles versus me. Tuition, birthday gifts, cars, trips. The numbers speak for themselves. Dad's jaw tightened. You've been tracking this? For years, I said evenly, because I needed to know I wasn't crazy. And then I pulled out a diary page, creased, faded, written in a childish scrawl. From when I was 9, I said. Then I read it aloud. Maybe next year they'll remember my birthday without Grandma calling to remind them. Mom's lip trembled. Dad looked away. I wasn't done. I placed a photo on the table. Christmas dinner, 3 years ago. A beautiful table, perfect centerpiece. Everyone smiling, except there was one empty chair with my name on a card. I was in Chicago working, I said. You knew I couldn't come. You sent me this picture with the caption, "We missed you." But you wanted me to feel guilty for not being there. I leaned closer, my voice quiet but steady. Look closer at that chair. Mom squinted, confused. That's not my usual seat, I said. That's the guest chair. Even when you pretend I belong, you still make sure I don't. The silence that followed was suffocating. Dad's face reddened. What do you want from us, Quinn? An apology? Fine. We favored Miles. He was the priority. He carries the Edwards name. The legacy. The words hit like cold water, but at least they were true. Mom broke down, tears finally spilling for real this time. We didn't mean to. It just happened. And then it became a pattern. And I was easier to ignore. I finished for her. Miles still hadn't spoken. His hand hovered over one of the photos, the one of him at 8 years old, surrounded by gifts, while 6-year-old me stood in the background smiling a tight, practiced smile. When he finally looked up, his eyes met mine. There was guilt there. Maybe recognition. But it was too late. I stood, gathering the papers and diary, leaving the albums behind. I don't need your apology, I said. I don't need your love, or your attention, or your validation. I waited 32 years for you to see me. I'm done waiting. I turned toward the door, heels clicking against the polished floor. Quinn, Mom sobbed. Please. Don't walk out like this. Dad didn't move, didn't speak. Miles opened his mouth but said nothing. I reached the front door. The weight of 3 decades pressing down on me, and then I said it, without turning around. The albums are yours to keep. Consider them a gift. Remember Semplice Ben from Midict. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded louder than thunder. Driving home that night felt different. The city lights blurred through my windshield, and for once, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, God. I was, but because something in me had finally snapped free. For years, I'd been begging to be seen by people who refused to look. And now, I wasn't begging anymore. A week passed. Then 2. Then a month. Not a single call from my parents. Not even from Miles. But strangely, The silence didn't hurt. It felt like oxygen after years underwater. At Horizon, things only got better. My work had never been stronger. The clients I handled were thriving. Lawrence stopped by my office one afternoon, smiling. "Quinn, the board wants to promote you Senior Director of Public Relations. You've earned it." For a second, I couldn't even speak. "Thank you," I said finally. "I thank you." He nodded. "You've built something remarkable here. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." When he left, I sat in silence for a long moment, staring out at the skyline. It wasn't the view from the Edwards mansion, but it was mine. At night, I went home to the lake house, cooked simple dinners, and watched the sun dip into the horizon. Sometimes Mrs. Bennett joined me. Sometimes Jennifer came by with wine, but often, I sat alone, not lonely, just at peace. I was building something real, something that had nothing to do with approval or legacy, my life. And then, one quiet evening, as I sat on the deck watching the stars, I whispered something to the dark water below. "Thank you. For every forgotten birthday, for every empty chair, for every time they taught me how not to love. Because without all that, I might never have learned how to love myself." The morning sun spilled through my lake house windows, warm and golden, painting the walls with light. It was my birthday again, but this time, there were balloons tied to the railing, a table full of food, and laughter echoing from the kitchen. Jennifer was frosting a cake, 33 candles, plus one for luck. Mark from marketing was trying and failing to open a bottle of champagne. Even Greg, my boss, had promised to stop by later. It wasn't a grand celebration. No glittering ballroom, no perfect dinner spread, but it was mine. A year ago, I'd spent my birthday alone with a store-bought cake. This year, I woke up to friends knocking on my door. People who wanted to be here just for me. It still amazed me sometimes how much could change in a single year. "Need a hand with that?" Mark asked, struggling with the cork. I smiled, adjusting the plates. "Only if you want champagne all over my ceiling." Jennifer laughed from across the counter. "He'll manage. Eventually." The air smelled like vanilla and coffee and something softer peace. "Hey, birthday girl," Jennifer said, leaning on the island. "How does it feel being a senior director now?" I grinned. "Still getting used to it. Every time someone calls me director, I look around to see who they're talking to." She smirked. "You earned it. Horizon's lucky to have you." I glanced out the window. The lake shimmered like glass under the sunlight. "Feels like the first time I've actually built something that's mine." Jennifer's smile softened. "It shows." By noon, the deck was alive with chatter and music. The grill smoked gently. Plates piled high with food. Mrs. Bennett sat in her favorite wicker chair, wrapped in a soft blanket, holding a glass of lemonade. "Quinn," she called. "I still say you should have charged entry for this view." I laughed. "If I start selling tickets, then it's work again." She patted my hand. "Good, you've worked enough." I looked at her, at the lines on her face, the kindness in her eyes, and thought, she's the only person who's ever shown up for every version of me. Greg clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. "All right, everyone. Before we dive into another round of burgers, a toast to Quinn Edwards, who taught us all that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you finally get to lock from the inside." Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. I couldn't stop smiling. The afternoon slipped by in golden light. Someone brought out a portable speaker. Jennifer turned on music. For the first time in years, I danced, barefoot, laughing, unguarded. When the song ended, I found myself standing at the edge of the deck, looking out at the lake. The water sparkled with ripples. And for a moment, I felt a quiet kind of happiness. The kind that doesn't scream. It just stays. I almost didn't notice the car door slam, but I knew that sound, that engine, that timing. My heart skipped. When I turned, I saw him, Miles, standing awkwardly by the steps, a small, wrapped package in his hands. The party went quiet. Even the music seemed to fade. He looked thinner. Older, maybe. The confident posture was gone. "Hey," he said, clearing his throat. "Sorry to crash. I wanted to give you this." In person. The deck stayed silent, all eyes on me, and for a long moment I wasn't sure what to say. Finally, I took a breath. "Join us," I said. "There's food. Wine. People who don't bite." A few chuckles broke the tension. Jennifer gestured to the extra chair. "You heard her. Sit down before I make you dance for it." Miles laughed softly and took a seat. Later, when most of the guests had moved inside, he and I ended up at the end of the dock, feet dangling above the water. The wrapped package sat between us. Neither of us reached for it. The lake stretched out in front of us, wide, calm, endless. He spoke first. "I've been in therapy." I blinked, surprised. "Really?" "Yeah." He looked out at the water. "It's eye-opening. Dad still won't go, but Mom's trying. She talks about you a lot. Let her, not all. And the greased of their present and fiver. Letter not all. That's new, I said carefully. He nodded. She says you were right. About everything. About how they treated you. I didn't know what to do with that. After a moment I asked, and you? He exhaled, long and heavy. I didn't see it, Quinn. I really didn't. I thought you were just distant. Independent. But I watched those albums after you left. I couldn't unsee them. He finally pushed the package toward me. Open it. I hesitated, then peeled the paper away. Inside was a simple wooden frame. A photograph I'd never seen before me. Maybe 7 years old, perched on the tire swing from our old backyard. Laughing. Carefree. Where did you find this? In Dad's storage boxes, he said. Had it restored. Thought you should have it. The image blurred as my eyes filled. It's proof, he said quietly, that you existed. Even when nobody was looking. I couldn't speak. I just held the frame, running my fingers along the edge. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't enough to erase years of silence. But it was something. A beginning. The sound of footsteps pulled me from my thoughts. Through the glass doors of the house, I saw her, Mom. Standing alone on the porch, clutching a small bakery box. Miles looked at me. I didn't tell her until today, he admitted. She insisted on coming. For a long moment, I just stared. The version of me from a year ago would have panicked, scrambled to fix the situation, softened the edges for her. But that version of me was gone. I stood slowly, holding the photo frame against my chest. When I reached the porch, Mom's hands were trembling. Happy birthday, Quinn, she said softly. She held out the box. Inside sat a single cupcake with one candle. Carrot cake. My favorite. She smiled nervously. You always liked this, didn't you? I looked at her, really looked. For once, she wasn't performing. She wasn't playing the part of the perfect mother. She just looked human. I did, I said quietly. Thank you. Her eyes welled up. I know it's late. I know I can't undo everything. But maybe I can start by remembering the small things. The candle flickered slightly in the breeze. I stepped aside, gesturing toward the warm glow of the living room. The party's winding down. You can stay for cake if you'd like. Her shoulders eased. Relief maybe. Hope. I'd like that. Miles smiled faintly behind her. And for the first time in years, we all walked inside together. Later that night, after everyone left, the house fell quiet again. I stood on the dock, barefoot, holding a glass of champagne. The water mirrored the moonlight, calm and endless. A year ago, I'd spent this night in a dark apartment, staring at an empty inbox. Now, I was surrounded by memories that didn't hurt to touch. Gifts chosen with care. Photos that made me laugh. Messages from people who saw me. My phone buzzed with a text. Mrs. Bennett. Did you enjoy your day, dear? I smiled, typing back. For the first time, I truly celebrated myself. Then I set the phone aside and raised my glass to the reflection staring back from the lake, steady, peaceful, whole. To the woman, I whispered, who finally learned that validation begins within. The wind stirred gently across the water. The last candle from the cupcake flickered out, its smoke curling upward like a sigh of release. I breathed in, smiled, and let the night hold me. A few weeks passed after that birthday, the kind of weeks that drifted by slowly, marked not by chaos, but by the rhythm of peace. The lake house had settled into its own heartbeat, gentle waves against the dock, birds at sunrise, the faint hum of crickets when evening came. Every morning, I'd make coffee, sit on the deck, and watch the light move across the water. Sometimes I'd work from my laptop, sometimes I'd just breathe. For once, there was no pressure to perform. No voice telling me I wasn't enough. And then one morning, the phone rang. Quinn? Mom's voice. Soft, hesitant. Yes. A pause. I wanted to thank you for letting me come that night. It meant a lot. Her tone wasn't the usual polished perfection. There was no agenda, no guilt disguised as concern. Just sincerity. I'm glad you came, I said. I've been thinking, she continued, about those albums. About everything you showed us. You were right. We didn't see you. Not the way we should have. The words caught me off guard. Part of me wanted to say, too little. Too late. But another part, the one that had finally made peace with letting go, just listened. I know it'll take time, she said quietly. But I'd like to try again. If you'll let me. I looked out at the lake, at the ripples of sunlight glinting off the surface. I'm open to that, I said. But it has to be honest this time. No pretending everything's fine. Honest, she repeated, as if testing the word. I can do that. We talked for a few more minutes, awkward but real, and when I hung up, I realized something I hadn't before. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean erasing the hurt. It means choosing peace over proof. Over the next few months, small changes began to happen. Mom started calling not every day, but enough to surprise me. Sometimes just to tell me about a recipe she'd tried. Sometimes to ask how work was going. Once, she even called to say, "I'm proud of you." And she didn't whisper it like a secret. Miles reached out too, in small ways. A forwarded meme. A photo of his daughter with, "She wants to visit the lake this summer." Dad stayed distant. But even that didn't sting like it used to. Some people, I'd learned, need time to see what they refuse to face. And that's okay. Because now I understood he didn't define my worth. He never did. Work was thriving. The Westfield campaign had landed 2 new accounts. The board praised my leadership. Horizon offered me the chance to mentor younger PR executives. It felt good passing on the lessons I'd learned the hard way. During one of those sessions, a young intern named Layla stayed behind after the meeting. "Miss Edwards," she said shyly. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. How do you stay confident, even when people don't notice what you do?" The question hit deeper than she realized. I smiled gently. "You stop waiting for them to notice. You start noticing yourself." She blinked. "That sounds simple." "It isn't," I said softly. "But it's worth it." She nodded, scribbling the words in her notebook. And as she left, I felt something shift inside me again, like all the pain I'd carried had finally found purpose. Maybe that was what healing looked like. Not one big revelation, just steady, quiet transformation. That winter, the lake froze over, for the first time since I'd moved in. I woke up one morning to a sheet of glass outside my window still. White. Perfect. Jennifer came up for the weekend with hot chocolate and a stack of old movies. We built a fire, stayed in pajamas, and talked about everything and nothing. At one point she looked around the living room and smiled. "You built all this," she said. "Out of pain. Out of survival." I corrected gently. "Same thing," she said, smiling. "You turned it into beauty." Spring came quietly. The snow melted. Flowers bloomed near the porch. I planted lavender by the windowsill, remembering how Mom used to grow it when I was little. She'd called a few days before, asking if she could visit. When she arrived, she carried 2 cups of coffee and a small bag of groceries. "I brought breakfast," she said. "And no agenda." We sat on the deck in the morning Sunday. She handed me a plate of scrambled eggs and toast, smiling softly. "This is nice," she said after a while. "It is." She hesitated, then looked at me. "I went through your old things last week. Found your college essay. The one about independence." I never realized how lonely it sounded. I met her eyes. "It was." She nodded. "I'm sorry." He won't exactly a last their sound. For once, she didn't try to explain. She didn't make excuses. She just said the words and meant them. That's when I realized something. Forgiveness isn't a gift for them. It's a release for you. By summer, the lake house had become more than just a home. It was a place of gathering. Colleagues came up for weekends. Mrs. Bennett taught everyone how to make pie crust from scratch. Even Miles visited once, bringing his daughter, Emma. She was 7, curious, talkative, and fearless. When she found the tire swing I'd hung by the big oak, she gasped. "My daddy said you used to have one like this." I smiled. "That's right. You want to try it? Thank you for watching that say." "He wanted one to another." She nodded enthusiastically. As she swung higher, her laughter filled the air. Miles stood a few feet away, watching quietly. "She reminds me of you," he said. "Let's hope she gets a better childhood," I replied. He nodded, eyes glistening. "That's the plan." That night, after they left, I sat by the fireplace with a glass of wine, and thought about how much could change when you stop chasing validation. The people who truly love you don't need convincing. And the ones who never saw you well, that's no longer your burden to carry. Months later, a letter arrived in the mail. Elegant handwriting, my father's. For a moment, I just stared at the envelope, the neat black ink spelling my name correctly this time. Inside was a single page. "Quinn, I've watched from afar. I see what you've built. You were right about many things I refuse to admit. Your strength reminds me of your mother when she was young. I may not say it well, but I am proud of you, Dad." No apology, no excuses, but for the first time, an acknowledgement. I folded the letter carefully, and placed it in the last page of the empty photo album, the one that used to represent all the things they forgot. Now, it held proof that people can change, even if it takes a lifetime. That night, I stepped out onto the deck again. The moonlight shimmered over the water, soft and forgiving. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who waited by the phone, the one who lit her own birthday candles. She deserved this peace. So I whispered into the quiet, "Happy birthday, Quinn," and somewhere inside, that forgotten version of me finally smiled back. The summer faded gently. The kind of season that didn't end so much as it exhaled. The air smelled faintly of pine and sun-warmed water. And each morning when I woke, the lake looked different. Sometimes calm as glass, sometimes restless and rippled by wind. My days fell into a rhythm. Coffee at sunrise, work from the deck. Meetings that ended with laughter instead of pressure. Horizon had become more than just a company. It was a space where I could lead without fear. Lawrence, the CEO, had started letting me take point on the biggest campaigns. Clients trust you, he said one afternoon during a strategy session. You make them feel heard. That's rarer than talent. It was one of the simplest compliments I'd ever received and somehow, one of the most meaningful, because for the first time, being seen didn't feel conditional. It wasn't about performing for approval. It was about presence. One evening in late August, Horizon hosted a networking event downtown. High ceilings, soft jazz, champagne glasses that clinked like chimes. I'd almost declined the invitation, but Jennifer had insisted. You can't stay in your lakeside bubble forever, she said, waving a glass of rosé. Come be social. So I went. That's where I met him. Daniel Hayes, an independent consultant Horizon had collaborated with on a sustainability project. Tall, quiet, dressed simply. The kind of person who didn't fill a room by speaking loudly but by listening carefully. We ended up talking by the balcony, city lights reflected in the glass walls behind us. I've read your campaign reports, he said. They're not just data, they tell stories. That's rare. I laughed. That's what happens when you spend your childhood trying to make people notice you. You learn how to communicate. He tilted his head, smiling. Did they ever notice? I looked out at the skyline. Eventually. But by then, I'd learned to stop waiting. He nodded slowly, as if he understood more than I said aloud. We talked for over an hour about work, travel, old hobbies. He told me he used to be an architect before pivoting to consulting. I design ideas now, he said, half smiling. When the evening ended, he offered to walk me to my car. Under the glow of the parking lot lights, he said, You know, Quinn, you have this way of talking about hard things like they're survival stories instead of tragedies. Maybe because they are, I replied. He chuckled. I'd like to hear more of them. Maybe over dinner sometime? For a moment, I hesitated. The old part of me, the one trained to expect disappointment, flinched. But then I remembered the woman I'd become. The one who'd built her own life. Her own peace. I'd like that, I said. Dinner turned into coffee. Coffee turned into weekends. Weekends turned into quiet evenings on my deck, talking about everything from architecture to childhood dreams. Daniel wasn't flashy. He didn't try to impress me. He listened. He asked. He showed up. Once, while helping me fix a loose step on the dock, he said, You built all this by yourself. That's impressive. And, I smiled. Necessity is a good teacher. He glanced at me, then at the lake. Maybe. But peace doesn't just happen by necessity. You have to choose it. That line stayed with me for days, because that was exactly it. Peace isn't a gift, it's a practice. Around that time, Horizon launched a mentorship initiative for young women in PR. Lawrence asked me to lead it. The first session was held in our Chicago headquarters. Dozens of interns and new hires gathered, bright-eyed and nervous. I told them stories not about perfection, but about failure. About crying in bathroom stalls after client meetings. About working on holidays because I thought that's what success required. And then I told them the truth. Your worth isn't measured by how much you give up for approval. It's measured by what you build when no one's clapping. When the session ended, a young woman approached me in tears. Thank you, she said. I thought I was the only one who felt invisible. You're not, I said, smiling. You just haven't found the right light yet. That evening, Daniel came to the lake house. He'd brought takeout Thai food and a bottle of wine. As we sat on the deck, twilight settling over the water, he asked, Do you ever miss the city? Sometimes, I admitted. But not enough to go back. The noise was constant. Here, I can actually hear myself think. He leaned back in his chair. It suits you, the calm. I didn't used to be calm, I said. I was reactive. Every comment, every slight, it all lived in me. But now, I can just let things pass. He smiled gently. That's healing, Quinn. That's not something people fake. And this was er longs of inner away for sorry. They're fine of outer away. And this one's. It is working to a mech success ed. When the pictive alongs of adio, I looked at him for a long moment. And you? What about you? What brought you here? He hesitated, swirling his wine. My wife passed 3 years ago. Cancer. My heart sank. I'm so sorry. He nodded slowly. I lost myself for a while. Threw myself into work, into fixing other people's problems. But lately, I've been thinking maybe I can start over. His honesty disarmed me. It wasn't the kind of vulnerability people perform. It was quiet, unguarded. I reached across the table and took his hand. You can, I said softly. We both can. By autumn, we'd fallen into an easy rhythm. He'd drive down on Fridays, help me with projects around the house. We'd cook dinner, Watch the sunset. Talk about nothing in particular. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was steady, patient, built on mutual respect rather than need. One evening, while we were repainting the porch railing, he looked at me and said, "You know what I admire most about you?" I laughed. "My ability to wield a paintbrush?" He shook his head. "Your ability to stay kind without staying small." For a long time after he said that, I couldn't speak, because no one had ever described me that way before. As winter approached, I took a week off work. Daniel helped me decorate the house for the holidays, garland along the staircase, candles in every window. It wasn't about perfection, it was about presence. When Mom visited, she brought homemade cookies. She and Daniel talked like old friends. Miles stopped by later that weekend with Emma, who immediately claimed the tire swing as hers. And as I watched them all laughing, sharing food, clinking glasses, I realized something simple but powerful. This wasn't a replacement family. It wasn't about filling a void. It was about expansion. Healing doesn't mean erasing what hurt you. It means building something stronger beside it. That night, after everyone left, I stood outside again, snowflakes catching in my hair. Daniel slipped his arms around me from behind. "Penny for your thoughts?" he murmured. I smiled. "Just thinking about how strange life is. How the things that used to break me ended up building me." He kissed my temple. "You earned every piece of this piece, Quinn." I looked out over the frozen lake, lights from the house glowing behind us. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for a call, or a text, or anyone's approval. I already had everything I needed. And more than that, I had everything I chose. The new year began quietly. No resolutions, no grand declarations. Just a slow sunrise over the lake, and the smell of coffee filling the kitchen. Daniel was already there when I woke, flipping pancakes like he'd done it his whole life. "Morning, Director Edwards," he teased, sliding a plate toward me. "The woman who runs empires deserves breakfast." I smiled, still half asleep. "Empires don't run on pancakes." "They should," he said, grinning. I laughed and realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. Lightness. The kind that comes when you stop surviving and start living. Work had taken on a new dimension. Horizon's reputation had grown, and with it, so had mine. I'd been invited to lead a global PR campaign, partnerships in Europe, Asia, and beyond. It was everything I dreamed of 5 years ago. The kind of opportunity that used to define success for me, but now, it didn't feel like validation, it felt like evolution. Lawrence pulled me aside one morning before my flight to London. "You've built something incredible here, Quinn," he said. "Just promise me you'll take time for yourself too." "I am," I said, and meant it. London was rain and tea and cobblestone. It was also the first time I'd been overseas since childhood, back when family vacations didn't include me. Now, walking through the old streets, I wasn't the girl who'd been left behind. I was the woman who'd bought her own ticket. During the trip, I spoke at a marketing conference, standing before hundreds of industry leaders. The title of my presentation: "The Power of Storytelling, Turning Pain into Purpose." When I finished, the applause came like a wave. Afterward, a young woman approached me, eyes shining. "My parents don't believe in what I do," she said softly. "But hearing you talk, it reminded me that it's okay to build my own path." I smiled. "Then promise me something: never let someone else's blindness make you doubt your vision." She nodded, holding back tears. "On my last night in London," Daniel called. "How's the view from across the ocean?" he asked. "Gray and poetic," I said, smiling. "You'd love it." "When are you coming home?" "Tomorrow." "Why?" "Because I think I'm finally ready to ask you something." My heart skipped. "That sounds ominous." He chuckled. "Just come home, Quinn." When I landed at O'Hare, snow was falling again. Daniel met me at arrivals, holding a cardboard sign that said, "Welcome home, world changer." I laughed so hard people turned to stare, but what he did next left me speechless. He dropped to one knee, right there in the middle of the crowded terminal, and pulled out a small velvet box. "Quinn Edwards," he said, his voice steady but warm. "You've spent your life proving you don't need anyone's permission to be amazing. So I'm not here to complete you. I'm here to walk beside you. Will you marry me?" The noise of the airport blurred into silence. All I could see was him. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, steady and sure. "Yes," I whispered. When he stood and kissed me, the terminal erupted into applause, and for the first time, I didn't flinch from attention. I accepted it, because it was mine. We decided to keep things simple. No grand wedding. No endless guest list. Just a lakeside ceremony with close friends, colleagues, Mrs. Bennett, and Miles, who stood beside me as I walked down the small wooden dock in a pale blue dress that matched the water. Mom was there too. She cried through the entire thing, clutching a tissue and whispering, "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Dad stood a few feet behind her, expression unreadable, but when the ceremony ended, he approached me slowly. "Congratulations," he said, voice rough. You've built a life anyone would be proud of. Thank you, I said simply. Then, as if it cost him everything, he added, I'm sorry. Just that. 2 words, no explanations. No defenses. And somehow, that was enough. The weeks that followed were a blur of new routines and gentle joy. Daniel moved into the lake house, and suddenly, my space became ours. We cooked together, argued playfully about decor. No, Daniel, the toolbox does not belong in the living room. And spent quiet evenings watching sunsets turn the lake into molten gold. Mom visited often, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes nothing but stories. One night, she showed up with a photo frame. Inside was a picture of me as a baby sleeping in her arms, both of us smiling. I found it in an old box, she said softly. Thought you should have it. I took it from her, feeling the weight of years dissolve. Thank you, I said. She squeezed my hand. Thank you for not giving up on us, even when we didn't deserve it. By early spring, Horizon asked me to return to Chicago temporarily to open a new division. It meant long commutes and longer hours again. But this time I wasn't doing it alone. Daniel would drop me off some mornings, kissing my forehead before I stepped out of the car. Go be brilliant, he'd say. And when I came home late, he'd be there, lights dimmed, dinner waiting, the house warm. One night, after another long day, I walked into the living room to find him sketching something on a notepad. What's that? I asked, setting my bag down. He smiled. A design. For work? For us. He turned the pad around. It was a blueprint, a new guest house beside the lake. For family visits, he said. Or maybe a studio. A space for you to write that book you keep talking about. I blinked. You remember that? He nodded. You said once you wanted to tell stories that help people feel seen. I leaned down and kissed him. I think I already started. We're setter. They rest when the well say forgiveness. That spring, Miles and Emma visited again. Mom and Dad came too. The lake house was full of laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of grilled vegetables and lemon pie. At one point, Emma tugged my hand. Aunt Quinn, will you tell me a story? I smiled. What kind of story? One where the girl saves herself, she said without hesitation. I looked at her so bright, so unbroken, and nodded. I think I have the perfect one. So I told her. Not the edited version. Not the fairy tale. The real one about a girl who waited for people to remember her, and then one day, remembered herself instead. By the time I finished, Emma was smiling sleepily against my shoulder. Miles met my eyes across the room and mouthed. Thank you, I nodded. Because maybe, just maybe, this was the real full circle. That night, after everyone left, I stood outside again, barefoot on the cool deck. The moonlight shimmered over the lake like liquid silver. Daniel joined me, slipping his arm around my waist. Do you ever think about how far you've come? He asked. I exhaled softly. Sometimes. But mostly, I think about how far I'll go, he smiled. With me? With or without, I said playfully, but preferably with. He laughed, kissing my temple. The wind rippled across the lake, scattering light like confetti. And as I looked out over the water, I thought not of what I'd lost but of everything I'd built. Because this wasn't a comeback story, it was a continuation. Years later, the lake still glistened the same way in the morning light, soft gold, rippling over calm water. But everything else in my life had grown richer, deeper, quieter in the best way. The dock had been rebuilt twice. The lavender by the windows had spread wildly. And inside the house, laughter had carved itself into the walls like a permanent echo. It wasn't just a home anymore. It was a story. Every board, every photograph, every cup of coffee shared with someone who cared enough to show up. I'd written the book Daniel once teased me about. It was called The Forgotten Birthday. It wasn't a memoir, exactly. It was a story about a girl who learned that the greatest gift she'd ever receive was the one she gave herself. Permission to be seen. The first print run sold out in 2 weeks. Horizon had turned it into a mentorship project for young women finding their voices. When I signed copies at the launch event, I saw faces that reminded me of every version of myself. The ones who smiled through neglect, who overachieved to be noticed, who mistook silence for strength. I told them what I wished someone had told me. You're not hard to love, you've just been loved by people who didn't know how to see you. And when they clapped, it didn't feel like applause, it felt like connection. After the signing, I walked out onto the balcony overlooking the Chicago River. Daniel joined me, arm brushing mine. You did it, he said. I smiled. No. We did. He shook his head gently. No, Quinn, you did. You took pain and turned it into light. That's all you. I looked out at the city lights shimmering below, my reflection faint in the glass. For a moment, I thought of the girl in that empty photo album, the one waiting for her parents to remember her birthday. I wanted to tell her, you're going to make it. And one day, they'll remember not because you reminded them, but because you became unforgettable. The next morning, I woke to a text from Mom. Happy birthday, sweetheart. We're proud of you. No guilt. No agenda. just words that landed softly. I replied with a photo, me holding a cup of coffee on the deck, the lake behind me glowing in sunrise light. Thank you. You taught me what not to forget. That evening, my house filled again, friends, colleagues, even some of the interns I'd mentored. Jennifer arrived with a cake so big it looked like it came from a wedding catalog. You only turned 40 once, she said, placing it on the counter. Mrs. Bennett, now in her 80s, still sharp as ever, sat near the window, smiling at the chaos. When everyone gathered around, Daniel clinked his glass. Can I have your attention? The chatter quieted. He looked at me, his eyes soft. The kind of love that doesn't need to be proven. Quinn used to think birthdays didn't matter, he said. Now she turns them into revolutions. Because what she learned and what she teaches all of us is that celebration isn't about who shows up for you. It's about showing up for yourself. The room broke into applause, cheers, laughter. I laughed too, even as tears threatened. Daniel gestured to the cake. Now make a wish. Everyone leaned in, expectant. I stared at the candles, tiny flames flickering like stars. For a long moment, I didn't move. Then I smiled. I already did, I said softly. And it came true. The crowd cheered. The candles went out in one breath. And in that warm, glowing moment, surrounded by the life I'd built, not the one I'd inherited, I realized something simple and extraordinary. The girl who'd once begged to be seen had become the woman people looked to for light, not because of titles or accolades, but because she lived honestly, loved deeply, and never forgot what it felt like to be invisible. That empathy had become her superpower. That story, her legacy. Later that night, when everyone had gone home, the house returned to its quiet hum. The candles had burned low, the deck lights reflected gently on the lake. I stepped outside, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket. The air was cool, crisp, full of the scent of pine and distant rain. I thought about all the birthdays that had come before, the ones forgotten, the ones lonely, the ones reclaimed. And then I whispered to the water. This is what was worth celebrating all along. Not the party, not the perfection, but the becoming. The slow, patient rebuilding of a life that once felt small. The courage to forgive without erasing the truth. The choice to love again, not because I needed to, but because I finally could. Behind me, through the window, the reflection of my home glowed warm and alive. And for the first time, I understood completely. I wasn't the forgotten one anymore. I was the author of the story, of the healing, of the legacy. The lake rippled softly, as if it had been listening all along. And as the stars stretched across the sky, I whispered one final truth to the night. Every birthday is a beginning. Then I smiled because I finally believed it. Doing something good together. I smiled faintly. Maybe. I think he'd be proud of the parts of himself we decided to keep. She nodded. Yeah. The good parts. We sat in silence for a while, letting the golden light stretch between us. No competition. No resentment. Just two women who had finally grown into sisters. Weeks passed. The podcast kept growing. But I started recording less often, not out of burnout, but because I realized healing didn't always need to be narrated. Some chapters deserve privacy. Instead, I spent my evenings throwing clay at the studio. The rhythm of the wheel grounding me in the present. One night, Monica stopped by, watching as I shaped a wide, shallow bowl. You always make things that hold, she said softly. I looked up. What do you mean? Your buildings hold people, your words hold pain. Your hands hold clay until it becomes something whole. I smiled, wiping my hands on my apron. Maybe that's what I was meant to do. Make spaces that hold what's worth keeping. In late August, I received another letter, this time from Mom. Her handwriting was steadier, more confident. Iris, I'm living near the coast now, volunteering twice a week. The women I meet remind me of you, strong, kind, determined. I see now how much I tried to make you smaller so I could feel safe. I'm sorry for that. If you ever want to visit, the door is open. Love, Mom. I read it 3 times. Then I set it beside my window, where the afternoon sun touched it gently. I didn't feel the old sting anymore. Just gratitude that growth could happen even in the places where love once went quiet. I didn't write back immediately. Some doors don't need to be walked through right away. Sometimes it's enough to know they're open. Autumn came again, and with it, a new chapter. The publisher reached out about turning Blueprints for Boundaries into a book. They wanted my voice, the voice that trembled and softened and still dared to tell the truth. At first, I hesitated. But when I told Monica, she said, "The story isn't about pain anymore, Iris. It's about what you built after it." So I said yes. Writing it was different this time. No tears, no tightness, just clarity, the kind that comes when you're standing on the other side of the storm. Finally dry, watching sunlight fill the puddles. The day the manuscript was finished, I drove to the coast, the same one, where I'd torn that $2 bill years ago. The sea was still wild. The wind still carried the smell of salt and possibility. I stood there for a long time, watching the waves crash and fade, crash and fade. From my bag, I pulled out Dad's letter, creased, weathered, loved. And beside it, Mom's new one, steady, hopeful. I folded them together and tucked them into a glass jar I'd brought with me, sealing it shut. Then I buried it near the edge of the cliffs, under a small pile of stones, a marker, not of grief but of peace. Thank you, I whispered to the wind. For the lesson, for the letting go. That night, back home, I wrote the final line for my new book. Healing doesn't mean forgetting who you were. It means remembering without reliving. It means finding light where pain once lived, and realizing that the light stayed. I closed my laptop, exhaled, and let the silence settle. Outside, the city shimmered. Inside, my apartment glowed with the soft hum of everything I'd built, not from inheritance, but from intention. Months later, when Blueprints for Boundaries was published, I didn't have a big launch or press event. Instead, I hosted a small evening gathering at the Pottery Studio. Friends, co-workers, a few listeners from the podcast, even Chelsea flew in. The shelves were lined with candles and ceramic bowls I'd made over the years. Each one imperfect, each one enough. When everyone had arrived, I raised my glass. This, I said quietly, is what rebuilding looks like. Not perfection, just presence. Thank you for being part of it. They clapped, laughed, hugged. Chelsea leaned in and whispered, "He'd be proud, you know." I smiled. So would she. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat alone for a while. The candles flickered low. The room smelled faintly of clay and warmth. I thought about everything: the $2, the car, the Christmas that broke me, the vineyard, the letters, the forgiveness. And then, softly, I whispered to the quiet, I did it, not out of triumph, but out of truth. Because sometimes, the greatest victory isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right about who you could become. Outside, the city was asleep, wrapped in fog and stillness. I stepped out into the cool night air, looked up at the sky, and saw Orion again, bright, steady, familiar. Still watching, huh? I murmured. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the girl waiting to be seen. I felt like the woman who finally understood her own light.